This is Monica Perez, and we are starting a new book today. We are reading and discussing a book that I have been wanting to reread for a really long time. I don't reread them in advance of these little get-togethers of ours so that I can experience the joy of the book afresh with you. We just finished Saucers of the Illuminati by Jim Keith. And we are going to have a fantastic discussion. I did get landed the perfect person to join us in that discussion. So Graham from Grimerica is going to join us for that discussion. And that's going to be next week on Thursday if you don't join it. So I'm going to send a personal invitation to all of my premium subscribers. And if so you'll just automatically get that. And if you want to join the conversation anyway, email me at monicaperezshow@gmail.com. So that'll be super fun. So we've done all sorts of different things. That was about UFOs. The first one was about Danny Casolaro, which is true crime and conspiracy. And we did philosophy. We've done other conspiracy theories, UFOs, a libertarian classic, the law. This is spiritual, or I would only almost consider it ethical or practical, or it is a very slender volume, which is how I like to roll. Marcus Aurelius Meditations. And I didn't even review anything about him. So I'm going to read you the blurb. I'm going to read the intro, and we're going to hit this. And I feel like I want it to kind of unfold during the holiday season as we approach Christmas. And maybe towards the end, we have a conversation with somebody about it who maybe plugged into these kind of things. So let's just read the blurb on the back. This is the unabridged, modernized Dover 1997 republication of the George Long translation. It says, one of the world's most famous and influential books, Meditations by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, AD 121 to 180. It's important to realize. So 120 years, he was born 120 years after Christ. Incorporates the Stoic precepts he used to cope with his life as a warrior and administrator of an empire. Ascending to the imperial throne in AD 161, Aurelius found his reign beset by natural disasters and war. In the wake of these challenges, he set down a series of private reflections outlining a philosophy of commitment to virtue above pleasure and tranquility above happiness. So I'll say, I just told this to Parallel Mike. I had a great conversation with him. My incredibly humble Irish family had a family crest, and on it was a saying, I can't remember, it was in Latin, but it's virtue alone ennobles. So the nobility of man is accessible to all of us, of course, and it is by virtue of virtue. So with this book, I was thinking it's the kind of thing that you'd listen to slowly or pause or re-listen to or whatever, because it's not a narrative. It's this guy's reflections, his meditations. Anyway, let me continue with the blurb. Reflecting the emperor's own noble and self-sacrificing code of conduct, this eloquent and moving work draws and enriches the tradition of Stoicism, which stressed the search for inner peace and ethical certainty in an apparently chaotic world. Serenity was to be achieved by emulating in one's personal conduct the underlying orderliness and lawfulness of nature. And in the face of the inevitable pain, loss, and death, the suffering at the core of life, Aurelius counsels Stoic detachment from the things that are beyond one's control and a focus on one's own will and perception. So for me, I thought he was Christian. And the Christian, let me make sure. Let me just make sure. So maybe these principles were ripe then, and that's why he seemed Christian. So I have to actually ask. Just to confirm, I think he was not. No, he was not Christian. He was a Stoic. That I thought that's what they were talking about. And it predates when Christianity was embraced by the Roman emperor. Wasn't the first Roman emperor who I feel like it was Charlemagne. All right, we're gonna have to do a little editing here. Okay, there you go. Yeah, Constantine. That was it. Constantine. Okay, so yeah, obviously it wasn't Marcus Aurelius. It was in the 300s, like 100 and something years after this guy. Okay. Presented here in especially modernized version of the classic George Long translation. This updated and revised edition is easily accessible to contemporary readings. Not only provides a fascinating glimpse into the mind and personality of a highly principled Roman of the 2nd century, but also offers today's readers a practical and inspirational guide to the challenges of everyday life. This is all true. But I just don't think it's a coincidence that in this time, like he was halfway between Jesus and Constantine, these principles may have been a comfort in that era for specific reasons. And I think that we could use that comfort right now, and also practical advice. So I think that, like, what if there's no God? Why do we even bother, like, trying to be good or whatever? My mother would say, because it's a better way to live. But the whole system is better if people pursue virtue. But you also feel better about yourself. You know how to raise your children. You know what to do. I mean, I just feel on your deathbed, you're going to be happier when instead of saying, like, I could have just had one more spoonful of caviar, which I will not sell short. But I think this is at the heart of it. And then at the end, I might do spiritual works of mercy, corporal works of mercy, something like that to kind of like add to the timeless wisdom in this guy's meditations. All right, let's do the introduction. Several years ago, the New York Times Book Review was obliged to create a splinter category, advice, how-to, and miscellaneous, to ensure that traditional nonfiction books were not altogether bumped from its bestseller list. The titles in this booming self-help genre are often mere come-ons for the more costly emotional liniments peddled by the sages of the midnight infomercial. Audio tapes, videotapes, seminars, retreats, its spiritual void seemingly untouched by traditional religion and the blandishments of prosperity. The American middle class wanders the carnival tent of New Age healers and prophets, hell-bent on buying the happiness that money can't buy. This is not a new story. A spiritual malaise also pervaded the unprecedented peace and wealth of the Roman Empire, driving its citizens away from their ethically sterile traditional paganism and into the arms of Eastern religions, or to the Roman establishment cults, such as Zoroastrianism, Mithraism, and Christianity. It was also a fertile atmosphere for Stoicism, an intellectually rigorous and ethically bracing Greek philosophy that thrived among the Roman nobility, eventually producing a masterpiece of ethical reflection in Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which one commenter has called one of the noblest products of the ancient mind. Boy, imagine if he was your commander-in-chief. Far from promising snappy solutions and slick solace, however, the Meditations instructs and inspires through its calm and unblinking reckoning with the elemental difficulties of human life and its emphasis on virtue rather than pleasure as the key to inner peace. Stoicism, having flowed through some 500 years of Greek and Roman history, is not so much a single systematic doctrine as a winding intellectual current, arising and flourishing amidst the uncertainties of the Hellenistic domain of the 3rd century BC, a time of political and social upheaval following the deaths of Aristotle, 322 BC, and Alexander the Great, 323 BC. Stoicism stressed the search for inner peace and ethical certainty despite the apparent chaos of the external world by emulating in one's personal conduct the underlying orderliness and lawfulness of nature. I hope that you like it. Frightening me gave me the answer of Constantine. That should just be something everybody knows, right? I should have known that, but I didn't. Let me know if you hear the dog. He likes to be in here when I'm reading, and he's out there barking at the front door. Since the writings of the founding Stoics, Zeno of Citium, or Cyprus, Cleanthes of Assos, and Chrysippus of Soli, survive only in fragments. Summaries of their ideas are perforce somewhat conjectural, based on citations in later writers. The philosophy gets its name from the Stoa Poikile, painted colonnade in Athens, where Zeno often held forth. So you can hear the dog, but it's okay. Thank you. Several key elements of the early Stoics emerge clearly, however, dividing philosophy into physics, logic, and ethics. So philosophy was physics, logic, and ethics. They sought to unify theory and practice in a comprehensive cosmology. In contrast to Plato and Aristotle, for whom the highest realities were spiritual or ideational, the Stoics held that the essence of reality was material. I think I'm I'm not Stoic like, I can take it. I'm Stoic like, yeah. Yes, this table does make a sound. It's real. I don't need to go beyond that. Arguing that an incorporeal soul could not direct the activities of a corporeal body. Unlike the purposeless dead matter of modern variants of materialism, this elemental stuff of the universe is an ever-living creative fire, a divinity, in fact, that forms all life. Physics and theology converge in a materialist pantheism. This living stuff has several names: God, Zeus, creative fire, ether, the word or reason, logos, order, law of destiny, fate. Through varying degrees of tension or tonicity, the primal fire spawns the various things of the world in cycles. In each periodos or magnus annus, it gradually separates into four elements: water, earthly fire, air, and earth. Eventually, conflagration again reduces all to the elemental fire, which then expands into the universe once again, and so on for eternity, each cycle an exact repetition of the last. I wouldn't be surprised. While avowing the divine presence in all things, Zeno disdained the panoply of institutional religion, rejecting temples and rituals, and stressing rather the worship of God through inner affirmation and outward virtue. The Stoic discovers the model for his virtuous conduct in studying the laws of nature. Just as each object, plant, and animal serves its fated role in the larger order, so the human strives to steer his actions in accordance with his unique power, reason, his inner mirror of the logos that governs the universe. Okay, this makes me think of what I determined long ago. Whether there's a God from on high telling us the rules, or over the millennia, we have gleaned the right way to live, the way human society must function. So it's either Mother Nature or God, but either way, the rules are the same. The wisdom is the same. By focusing on those things that are within his power, his own will and perception, and detaching himself from the things that are not, health, death, the actions of others, natural disasters, and so on, he attains the inner peace of the wise and just man. This cultivated detachment achieved through, whoa, what? Okay, you guys are going to have to help me with this. Ignis Natura Renovator Integra, INRI, which of course, let's see where it is. I usually have a crucifix within reach. Where did my beautiful little crucifix go? Anyway, INRI is what's on Christ's cross. And I always thought it meant here lies basically the King of the Jews. Through fire, all things are renewed whole. Are you kidding me? That could not be what it means on Christ. I thought it said, here lies the King of the Jews, or whatever here hangs. Man, I can't take that sidetrack right now. Feel free to blurb me in the readings of the over there in the chat. So interesting. By focusing on those things within his power, his own will and perception, and detaching himself from things that are not health, death, the actions of others, natural disasters, and so on, he attains the inner peace, eudaimonia, of the wise and just man. This cultivated detachment, apatheia, so apathetic, achieved through discipline, self-restraint, and moderation, sophrosene, applies as well to the worldly allures of sensual indulgence, power, and fame, which the Stoic abjures not from puritanical repugnance, but from his concern to free the soul for undistracted service to the Logos. It does remind me of when Swami Satchidananda said he was either quoting like Patanjali or it was his own thing. The question of whether or not there's a God is unanswerable and irrelevant, because the answer to how to live in this life is the same, and that is free yourself from desire. Now, they really use that expression broadly. Let's see what Marcus Aurelius comes up with. Apatheia does not equal apathy, however. The logos of Stoicism is not a fate to be passively acknowledged, but a spiritual potential to be actively won through intellectual and practical effort. I love it already. We're not even up to this guy's real stuff. This is just the intro. Moreover, the universality of reason enjoins a social consciousness that embraces the just life, not only for oneself, but for all humanity under the fatherhood of God, logos spermatikos. In Marcus's words, the prime principle in man's constitution is the social. Transcending the parochial confines of class, tribe, and nationality, the Logos obliges each citizen of the universe to help in building what Maxwell Staniforth has aptly called a cosmopolis that would be the very image of the rationally ordered physical world. Interesting. Okay. The social consciousness of Stoicism is not, however, a summons to the activism of mass movements. Civic virtue is a mirage unless anchored in the inner virtue of each citizen. For the Stoic, the best antidote to outer turmoil is inner peace. I feel like the powers that be that conduct their psychological experiments en masse know all of this stuff, believe it, and work the opposite because they're evil. In Marcus's words, quote, how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only to what he does himself, that it may be just and pure. Elsewhere he writes, for nowhere either with more quiet or more freedom from trouble does a man retire than into his own soul, particularly when he has within him such thoughts that by looking into them, he is immediately in perfect tranquility. Thus does the Stoic define himself as a rational being in the face of all that beggars rationality. In Shakespeare's words, quote, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Marcus, quoting the cynic Monimus, puts it even more succinctly. Buckle up. All is opinion. I don't know, man. This guy's going to challenge my my need for objectivism. Objective truth. All right, well, let's see. Let's see if we can back it up. I feel like I have newsprint on my face. Marcus Aurelius, about him. Okay. The ethical precepts of Stoicism found a receptive audience among the practical worldly citizens of ancient Rome. The chief early proponents of Stoic philosophy in Rome, Panaetius and Posidonius, dwelled on its ethical and religious teachings, convinced that Chrysippus's emphasis on theoretical physics robbed the tradition of its moral grandeur. Later in the Republic and early in the Empire, currents of Stoic thought ran through the writings of prominent thinkers such as Cicero, Cato, and Seneca. Epictetus, a former slave whose teachings influenced Marcus Aurelius, focused on nurturing one's daimon, a much used term in the Meditations, the divine spirit of reason and conscience in each human. So we're going to have to remember that word, daimon, D-A-I-M-O-N, daimon. The divine spirit of reason and conscience in each human. So I always said God, and I probably learned this somewhere and just regurgitated it, but God must have given us the ability to tell the difference between right and wrong, the ability to reason, and free will, or we couldn't be worthy of reward or punishment. And he's identifying reason and conscience as inherent. So regardless of where he got it, we agree. Okay, Gerald is saying, I don't think Aurelius was a moral relativist at all. Who is the translator, author? Who wrote the introduction, it's not attributed, bizarrely. It's this Dover Books. George Long is the translation. And yeah, let's let him put his own words in it. Okay. So I'll finish this intro. It's just like another page, and then we'll get to the meat of the matter. Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, one of the wisest and noblest of Roman emperors, was a direct heir to this rich tradition. He was born Marcus Annius Verus to a patrician family. Verus, I just watched this crazy show on Netflix called Barbarians about the Rome versus the Germans. And I think the emperor or the governor over there who really lost the entire Roman Empire until it became the Holy Roman Empire. Varus. I wonder if they were related. Anyway, to a patrician family, April 26, AD 121. Both his parents having died young. He was adopted by his grandfather, under whose care he evidently passed a studious and happy childhood, schooled by a series of private tutors in the precepts of Stoicism, which he embraced wholeheartedly at the age of 25, devoting himself to studies under Rusticus the Stoic. Marcus's path to the throne was a circuitous one. Hadrian's first choice as his successor, Lucius Saeonius Commodus, died in 138, whereupon Hadrian adopted Titus Antoninus Pius, Marcus's uncle, and with the understanding that Titus would adopt both Commodus' son and Marcus, whose full name was then to become Marcus alias Aurelius Antoninus. Arturo! You may enter, but you have to stop barking. Thank you. Jeez Louise. Jeez. Okay. Yeah, Gerald is criticizing the translator, and not just the translators, but the people. Actually, to tell you the truth, I used to have a rule that I wouldn't read the introduction until the end of the book because it colors your perception. So maybe I should go back to that. I don't like to read the blurbs of movies and stuff. So point taken, but we already started, so I'm going to finish it. They seemingly set up a dual succession. Upon Hadrian's death that year, Marcus, at age 17, began, in effect, a 23-year apprenticeship for the emperorship, serving in a variety of important governmental posts while continuing his philosophical studies. Before Titus died in 161, he recommended Marcus alone as his successor. Marcus magnanimously insisted that his adoptive brother, Lucius Verus, share the emperorship despite the latter's apparent lack of real ability or political support. Marcus's reign was beset by natural disaster and war. An outbreak of plague spread panic throughout the Western Empire when vast stores of grain were spoiled by floods. Oh no. Marcus sold his precious jewelry to help abate the resulting suffering. Quadi and Marcomanni, tribesmen, those are the Germans, breached the borders of Pannonia, forcing Marcus to leave Rome for 2 years in order to take personal command of the threatened legions on the Danube, where he finally secured peace with the Marcomanni in 168. He was left sole emperor upon the death of Verus in 169. Later, maybe it was Varus who was the guy who lost the Germans. Later, an outbreak of war on the Rhine-Danube frontier compelled him to spend most of the next 3 years at Carnuntum. After successfully concluding his campaigns there by 174, he was called to Asia when his commander there, Avidius Cassius, revolted and declared himself emperor. Come on, like he needed that. Cassius, however, was murdered by his troops. The ever magnanimous Marcus spurned the offer of his head and pardoned the Cassius family. Faustina, Marcus's wife, died while accompanying him on his Asian tour. His grief appears to have been deeply felt. Returning to Rome through Athens, Marcus was initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries and endowed chairs of philosophy and rhetoric at the schools there. A year after his triumphal return to Rome in 176, renewed hostilities with German tribes forced Marcus to return to the Danube with his son. It was there, in the intervals of battle, that Marcus wrote down his meditations, which he originally titled, quote, "To himself," end quote, apparently intending them merely as a series of private reflections. It's kind of like my Twitter feed. He died at the military camp on March 17th, 189, at the age of 59. He was initiate, yeah. So let's go back to that for a second. He was in Eleusinian mysteries. What is the Eleusinian mysteries? Can you want to tell me? Yeah, Eleusinian mysteries was secret annual initiations held in honor of the goddess Demeter and Persephone, goddesses, at Eleusis near Athens. So he was Roman, this was Greek. The rituals were based on the myth of Persephone's abduction and return and aimed to provide initiates with hope for the afterlife and a profound spiritual experience. The ceremonies involved purification, fasting, processions, and secret rites within a special building called Telesterion, a series. So what were the rites? Initiates took a vow of silence. All right. This is a truly ill-fated little day. This is my son calling me from the other room. Yes, dear. Absolutely. Just wait for your person in 15 minutes. Thank you. Bye. Okay. Anyway, so what were the rites? They took a vow of silence, underwent a ritual of cleansing involving a sacrificial pig and immersion in the ocean. Reminds me of the first episode of Black Mirror. Sacred objects. The myth was reenacted. Experience was supposed to be transformative. Spiritual enlightenment, hope for the afterlife. Very interesting. And just so you know, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest was in 9 AD, way before this. So I guess they had subdued or made peace with those guys for a while. Okay. So he was an initiate, yet it's hard to unsee number one. Okay. Okay, so these guys are saying in the chat, Greek mystery rites with psychedelics. Aurelius's doctor wrote a book too. Maybe we'll read that. You don't fear death anymore. Your penalty for revealing the rites was death. I'm telling you, those Masons, they will not tell you. And the Skull and Bones people won't either. They will. It's not that we haven't read what they are. But if you ever meet somebody like that, and every once in a while I do, I mean, you probably do too, and just don't know it. But like if I've been to one of these like class reunion kind of things or whatever, you know, maybe you Google somebody like, hey, I saw that person on TV. But they will not, you know, you can ask them jokingly, hey, what really happens in the coffin? Not well received questions, I can tell you. So you go down to a cave, death and rebirth, etc. Hi, Mike. No. This is not a scam or written by Freemasons, although it is written by an Eleusinian initiate. Marcus Aurelius was an Eleusinian mystery initiate, but it may have just given him wisdom. No, I'm reading this straight up legit. Like I want the answers, and I was going to reread it anyway, so might as well share. Share. That's fair. Okay, so a year after his triumphal return to Rome in 176, renewed hostilities, blah, blah, blah. It was there he wrote to himself, apparently intending them merely as a series of private reflections. He died at the military camp on March 17th, 189, at the age of 59. The older you get, the younger that sounds. Just so you know, like I'm counting, like my mom died at 95. I'm like, I got a lifetime left yet. If the Meditations were simply another tract of mainstream Stoicism, it would likely not have emerged as a revered classic. It is precisely its unorthodox touches, its intimation of the idea of a personal God, its flashes of vulnerability and pain, its unwavering commitment to virtue above pleasure and to tranquility above happiness, its unmistakable stamp of an uncompromisingly honest soul seeking the light of grace in a dark world that lend the work its special power to charm and inspire. Yes, tranquility above happiness. My mother used to say that. She's, you're not happy, you're just having a good time. If at times Marcus's thoughts seem closer to Platonism or even Christianity than to Stoicism, yes, we admire him all the more for grappling openly with the promptings of conscience rather than merely genuflecting before the dogmas of creed. Gerald's not going to like that. A man, taking a shot at him, he was probably influenced by Christianity. I think that's probably how it all comes together. I know. Problem, Gerald, he loves my impression of my mom. The problem is she's dead, so I don't have any more material. I can only do it. It's stuff she said. And I miss her. She lived to 95. I have plenty of material, but I'm going to have to learn to channel her so I can keep it going. A man who, for reasons of state, possibly sanctioned the persecution of Christians, achieved a genuinely Christian depth of humility. In the words of Matthew Arnold, what an affinity for Christianity had this persecutor of the Christians. The effusion of Christianity, its relieving tears, its happy self-sacrifice were the very elements one feels for which his soul longed. They were near him. They brushed him. He touched them. He passed them by. Hey, man, maybe he got baptized in that last minute. There is a thing called baptism. I believe, weirdly, it's called baptism of desire, where if you knew what you needed to know to be baptized, you would have been. Like, it's for primitive people, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, let's hope for the best. Nearly 2 millennia after Marcus set down his thoughts, they speak with undiminished eloquence, giving us pause to wonder at a man who stood at the pinnacle of worldly power, yet preserved the inner life of a saint. I wonder if anyone's ever said a prayer for him. Maybe we should all say a little quick prayer that maybe he had a deathbed conversion. A note on the translation. This edition of Meditations, updated and revised, George Long, much admired for his scrupulous fidelity to the ancient Greek text. To enhance readability, we've modernized some of the archaic language and tangled syntax of Long's Victorian prose, about which even his contemporary Matthew Arnold commented, it's not quite idiomatic and simple enough. In a few passages where Long's original formulations border on utter opacity, we have consulted the C.R. Haynes translation for alternative renderings, taking care in all such cases to retain Long's equivalents for key concepts. All right. Now we're at the mercy of the translators, but it sounds like they're doing their best. The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, Book 1. From my grandfather Verus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper. From the reputation and remembrance of my father, modesty and a manly character. From my mother, piety and beneficence and abstinence, not only from evil deeds, but even from evil thoughts. My mother is like that. That was very annoying. She would practice and you got the message that you were supposed to do the same thing, a discipline of thought that she just wouldn't, she won't make fun of people on TV. Just like she doesn't want to think uncharitable. And further, simplicity in my way of living, far removed from the habits of the rich. We did that too. I'm not sure that was intentional. From my great-grandfather, not to have frequented public schools and to have good teachers at home and to know that on such things a man should spend liberally. Wow, his great-grandfather not not to have frequented public schools, but to have teachers at home and to spend liberally on it. Interesting. Who was his great-grandfather? Um, from my governor to be neither of the green nor of the blue party at the games in the circus. That's so great. Nor a partisan either of the Parmularius or the Scutarius at the gladiators' fights. From him, too, I learned endurance of labor and to want little and to work with my own hands and not to meddle with other people's affairs and not to be ready to listen to slander. I feel like we could just stop right there and everybody would be better. If you just did that stuff, you would be better off for life. The whole world would be better off. From Diogenetus, not to busy myself about trifling things and not to give credit to what was said by miracle workers and jugglers about incantations and the driving away of demons and such things, and not to breed quails for fighting. Okay. All right, everybody. Note to self, do not breed quails for fighting, nor to give myself up passionately to such things, and to endure freedom of speech, and to have become, to endure freedom of speech, because he was the king, and to have become intimate with philosophy, and to have been a hearer, first of Bacchius, then of Tandasis and Marcianus, and to have written dialogues in my youth, and to have desired a plank bed and skin, and whatever else of the kind belongs to the Grecian discipline. From Rusticus, I received the impression that my character required improvement and discipline, and from him I learned not to be led astray to sophistic emulation, nor to writing on speculative matters, nor to delivering little hortatory orations, nor to showing myself off as a man who practices much discipline or does benevolent acts in order to make a display, and to abstain from rhetoric and poetry and fine writing as vanity, I suppose, and not to walk about in the house in my outdoor dress, nor to do other things of the kind, and to write my letters with simplicity, like the letter that Rusticus wrote from Sinuessa to my mother, and with respect to those who have offended me by words or done me wrong, to be easily disposed to be pacified and reconciled as soon as they have shown a readiness to be reconciled, and to read carefully and not to be satisfied with a superficial understanding of a book, nor hastily to give my assent to those who talk overmuch. And I am indebted to him for being acquainted with all discourses of Epictetus, which he communicated to me out of his own collection. So that was from Rusticus. Wow, Rusticus had a lot to offer. From Apollonius. Oh, so these are his acknowledgments, basically. And it's everything. This is book 1. It's like 6 pages long. This might be the only thing you have to like re-listen to. Thank you. His grandfather was Marcus Annius Verus, a Roman senator from a wealthy Spanish family. From Apollonius, not the chick from Purple Rain. Maybe she was his great blah 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 granddaughter. I learned freedom of will and undeviating steadiness of purpose, and to look to nothing else, not even for a moment, except to reason, and to be always the same in sharp pains on the occasion of the loss of a child and in long illness, and to see clearly in a living example that the same man can be both most resolute and yielding. Oh my gosh, this was the thing I remembered absolutely the most. Be not peevish in giving instruction. I am somewhat peevish in giving instruction. Don't be peevish, especially with your kids. If Mike is still here, don't be peevish in giving instruction. And to have had before my eyes a man who clearly considered his experience and his skill in expounding philosophical principles as the smallest of his merits. And from him I learned how to receive from friends what are esteemed favors without being either humbled by them or letting them pass unnoticed. From Sextus, a benevolent disposition and the example of a family governed in a fatherly manner, and the idea of living comfortably to nature and gravity without affectation, and to look carefully after the interest of friends, and to tolerate ignorant persons and those who form opinions without consideration. He had the power of readily accommodating himself to all, so that intercourse with him was more agreeable than any flattery. And at the same time, he was most highly venerated by those who associated with him. And he had the faculty both of discovering and ordering in an intelligent and methodical way the principles necessary for life. And he never showed anger or any other passion, but was entirely free from passion and also most affectionate. And he could express approbation without noisy display. And he possessed much knowledge without ostentation. All right. From Alexander the grammarian, when to say whom and not who, to refrain from fault finding, and not in a reproachful way to chide those who uttered any barbarous or solecistic or strange sounding expression, but dexterously to introduce the very expression that ought to have been used, and in the way of answer or giving confirmation or joining in an inquiry about the thing itself, not about the word or by some other fit suggestion. So if you want to contradict someone, don't challenge it, just respond with the correct thing. And maybe it resonates and appears to be agreement. Interesting. From Fronto, I learned to observe what envy and duplicity and hypocrisy are in a tyrant, and that generally those among us who are called patricians are rather deficient in paternal affection. From Alexander the Platonic, not frequently nor without necessity to say to any one or to write in a letter that I have not leisure, nor continually to excuse the neglect of duties required by our relations to those with whom we live by alleging urgent occupations. Yes. Yes. So don't put that stuff down. I agree with that. That's why, like, if somebody's sick or whatever, that's why I want to read this in juxtaposition with the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. Because I think it's actually should be, and this is probably because I'm a woman, a mom, a wife, like that's like what I feel like my role is. And I think that's probably been defined as my role. It's that stuff. Like you need to drop everything and go visit somebody. Like you have to do it that way. Like Mary did with, was it Anne? No, Elizabeth. Hello, Kat. I am doing quite well. I still live in a disaster area. Thank you for asking. But I don't know. I just got to keep on keeping on. So from Catalyst, not to be indifferent when a friend finds fault, even if he should find fault without reason, but to try to restore him to his usual disposition, and to be ready to speak well of teachers, as it is reported of Domitius and Athenodotus, and to love my children truly. From my brother Severus, to love my kin, and to love truth, and to love justice. And through him I learned to know Thracia, Helvidius, Cato, Dion, Brutus, and from him I received the idea of a polity in which there is the same law for all, a polity administered with regard to equal rights and equal freedom of speech, and the idea of a kingly government that respects most of all the freedom of the governed. I learned from him also consistency and undeviating steadiness in my regard for philosophy, and a disposition to do good and to give to others readily and to cherish good hopes and to believe that I am loved by my friends. And in him I observed no concealment of his opinions with respect to those whom he condemned, and that his friends had no need to conjecture what he wished or did not wish. It was quite plain. From Maximus, I learned self-government. Yes, Gerald says, does not sound very moralistically relative to me. I totally agree. He is just laying this out. He's just laying it out. And actually what he's doing is he's describing how these other people laid it out for him. I don't think we know for sure how he's balanced these things, because I feel like it's very clear what he wants. You know, he's very clear. Whereas the other people, what did Alexander the grammarian said? You know, you don't have to make it clear. You just have to counter the error. So let's see how it unfolds. From Maximus, I learned self-government and not to be led aside by anything, and cheerfulness in all circumstances, as well as in illness. That is what my mother demonstrated. When I think she must have been in pain. Did I ever tell you about her walking up the stairs? She would stop at every step. And she mentioned that it was so she could say a Hail Mary and just offer the pain up. You know, she didn't complain about the pain, but I'm like, Ma, it takes you forever. I just say a Hail Mary on each step and then, you know, offer it up. I was like, okay. But so even in illness, she did not complain. And that's probably why she had people hanging out in her house till the day she died. And I think that helped her be happy and cheerful. He also learned from Maximus a just admixture in the moral character of sweetness and dignity, and to do what was set before me without complaining. I observed that everybody believed that he thought as he spoke, and that in all that he did, he never had any bad intention. This is Maximus. He never showed amazement and surprise, and was never in a hurry, and never put off doing a thing, nor was perplexed nor dejected, nor did he ever laugh to disguise his vexation, nor, on the other hand, was he ever passionate or suspicious. He was accustomed to do acts of beneficence, and was ready to forgive, and was free from all falsehood. And he presented the appearance of a man who could not be diverted from right, rather than of a man who had been improved. I observed, too, that no man could ever think that he was despised by Maximus, or ever venture to think himself a better man. He had also the art of being humorous in an agreeable way. I think we should all work on that, being humorous in an agreeable way. I just have to check on this kid. I'm telling you. In my adoptive father, I observed mildness of temper and unchangeable resolution in the things that he had determined after due deliberation, and no vainglory in those things that men call honors, and a love of labor and perseverance, and a readiness to listen to those who had anything to propose for the common weal, and undeviating firmness in giving to every man according to his deserts, and a knowledge derived from experience of the occasions for vigorous action and for remission. And I observed that he had overcome all passion for boys. Ooh. I observed he had overcome all passion for boys, and he considered himself no more than any other citizen. Just slip that one right in there. I hope we can say the same for Marcus. I think by the end of this book, I would call him, I was like, in my mind, like, I said, oh, really? So many times, it's like Marcus Aurelius. So, oh, really? He released his friends from all obligation to sup with him or to attend him of necessity when he went abroad, and those who had failed to accompany him by reason of any urgent circumstances always found him the same. I observed, too, his habit of careful inquiry in all matters of deliberation, and his persistency, and that he never stopped his investigation through being satisfied with appearances which first present themselves. So he always dug deeper for the true truth. And that his disposition was to keep his friends, and not to be soon tired of them, nor yet to be extravagant in his affection, and to be satisfied on all occasions and cheerful, and to foresee things a long way off, and to provide for the smallest without display, and to check immediately popular applause and all flattery. Check it. And to be ever watchful over the things that were necessary for the administration of the empire, and to be a good manager of the expenditure, and patiently to endure the blame that he got for such conduct. And he was neither superstitious with respect to the gods, nor did he court men by gifts, or by trying to please them, or by flattering the populace. But he showed sobriety in all things and firmness, and never any mean thoughts or actions, nor love of novelty. And the things that conduce in any way to the convenience of life, and of which fortune gives an abundant supply, he used without arrogance and without excusing himself, so that when he had them, he enjoyed them without affectation, and when he had them not, he did not want them. Nor one, that's important. I know I interrupt, but you learn things when you take breaks. You can't just so I'm gonna point something out. I always said that it's a Catholic thing, you can't be materialistic. But what does that really mean? Does it mean you can't have stuff? Not at all. You have to not love the stuff. So I've had stuff and I've had not stuff. I've had, losses. Like, I don't know how I would have dealt with the house burned down, but people are dealing with it. But I just always felt like, yeah, you need to not be so attached to things that you could not live without them. And I think that's all you really need. No one could ever say of him that he was either a sophist or a homebred flippant slave or a pedant. A sophist, like fake wisdom, homebred flippant slave, smart mouth slave. I think it was an emperor he's talking about. So I doubt that. A pedant is like overly rule oriented. But everyone acknowledged him to be a man ripe, perfect, above flattery, able to manage his own and other men's affairs. Besides this, he honored those who were true philosophers, and he did not reproach those who pretended to be philosophers, nor yet was he easily led by them. He was also easy in conversation, and he made himself agreeable without any offensive affectation. He took a reasonable care of his body's health, not as one who was greatly attached to life. Yes, 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 yes. So a friend of mine was recently at a gathering of, I don't know what it was, like a reunion of some kind. And he said, oh, these guys are all retiring. And all they could talk about was the things they're doing to ensure longevity. But I have a doctor friend who says, don't worry about dying, worry about living. So as soon as this person reported this, it was like, were they a bunch of narcissists? Because I think what happened was they got rich. They spent their time getting rich and now they have the money and they don't have to work anymore. So they're just like, I want to live as long as I possibly can. But I don't think it works that way. So yeah, you should definitely take care of you. But the health thing is just the same as the God thing. Like the end game doesn't matter as much because it's the same truth for now. So I was smoking for a while there. Again, I didn't smoke for 16 years and this year has just been nuts. So I started smoking again. But it makes you sick, like in real time. Like you're coughing, like you can't sleep. It makes you sick in real time. So you got to be healthy so you can enjoy this day, not so you can live forever. So, and like yoga was invented so that you'd have the ability to have posture to meditate for 3 hours. But anyway, I agree with that. He took a reasonable care of his body's health, not as one who was greatly attached to life, nor out of regard to personal appearance, nor yet in a careless way, but so that through his own attention, he very seldom stood in need of the physician's art or of medicine or external applications, right? He was most ready. Thank you. Gerald's saying my skin looks great. Yeah, absolutely. As soon as I go on a health kick, I sleep better. Yeah, it's much better. I hadn't smoked in 16 years, so it's not like I was going on and off, but I just quit like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Through his own attention, he very seldom stood in need, right? He was most ready to give way without envy to those who possessed any particular faculty, such as that of eloquence or knowledge of the law or of morals or of anything else. And he gave them his help that each might enjoy reputation according to his deserts. And he always acted conformably to the institutions of his country without showing any affectation of doing so. Further, he was not fond of change nor unsteady, but he loved to stay in the same places and to employ himself about the same things. And after his paroxysms of headache, he came immediately fresh and vigorous to his usual occupations. I wonder what was wrong with him. His secrets were not many, but very few and very rare, and these only about public matters. And he showed prudence and economy in the exhibition of the public spectacles and the construction of public buildings. So are you saying he didn't have a 300 million, right? It can't be billion. $300 million ballroom. A $300 million ballroom. I don't think he had that. So he showed prudence and economy in the exhibition of the public spectacle and the construction of public buildings, in his donations to the people, and in all such things. For he was a man who looked to what ought to be done, not to the reputation that is got by a man's acts. Because it's the Trump ballroom. That's what it is. He did not take the bath at unseasonable hours. He was not fond of building houses, nor curious about what he ate, nor about the texture and color of his clothes, nor about the beauty of his slaves. Yeah, he was no dandy. His dress came from Lorium, his villa on the coast, and from Lanuvium generally. We know how he behaved to the toll collector at Tusculum, who asked his pardon, and such was all his behavior. There was in him nothing harsh, nor implacable, nor violent, nor, as one may say, anything carried to the sweating point. But he examined all things separately, as if he had abundance of time, and without confusion, in an orderly way, vigorously and consistently. And that might be applied to him, which is recorded of Socrates, that he was able both to abstain from and to enjoy those things which many are too weak to abstain from and cannot enjoy without excess. Me, smoking. People can walk around with cigarettes in their pocket and not smoke them. I am not one of those people. So I am not anything like his adoptive father. Okay. But to be strong enough both to bear the one and to be sober in the other is the mark of a man who has a perfect and invincible soul, such as he showed in the illness of Maximus. Did not catch that reference. Yeah, I do not have a perfect and invincible soul. That's okay. To the gods, I am indebted for having good grandfathers, good parents. Oh, he himself is indebted to the gods because he himself has good grandfathers, good parents, a good sister, good teachers, good associates, good kinsmen and friends, nearly everything good. Further, what? Gerald, are you saying Aurelius was an opium addict? Is that what you are telling me right now? Are you telling me that? I guess if it's not illegal, it's probably not that big a deal. It's like whatever. Some people eat CBD gummies to go to sleep. Maybe it was no big deal. I can't believe it. To the gods, blah, blah. I owe it to the gods, furthermore, that I was not hurried into any offense against any of them, though I had a disposition that, if opportunity had offered, might have led me to do something of this kind. Yeah, I think of that. I'm really glad that I never did anything really, really stupid. But through their favor, there never was such a concurrence of circumstances as put me to the trial. That's a very good observation. Further, I am thankful to the gods that I was not longer brought up with my grandfather's concubine, and that I preserved the flower of my youth, and that I did not make proof of my virility before the proper season, but even deferred the time. Boy, he's just laying it all out there. I mean, that little tidbit resonating through the ages. That I was subjected to a ruler and a father who was able to take away all pride from me and to bring me to the knowledge that it is possible for a man to live in a palace without desiring either guards or embroidered dresses or torches and statues and other such ostentation, but that it is in such a man's power to bring himself very near to the fashion of a private person without being for this reason either meaner in thought or more remiss in action, with respect to the things that must be done for the public interest in a manner that befits a ruler. I thank the gods for giving me such a brother who was able by his moral character to rouse me to vigilance over myself and who at the same time pleased me by his respect and affection, that my children have not been stupid nor deformed in body, that I did not make more proficiency in rhetoric, poetry, and the other studies in which I should perhaps have been completely engaged if I had seen that I was making progress in them. Man, this guy sees the upside in everything. That I made haste to place those who brought me up in the station of honor, which they seemed to desire, without putting them off with hope of my doing it sometime after, because they were then still young. That I knew Apollonius Rusticus Maximus, that I received clear and frequent impressions about living according to nature and what kind of a life that is, so that, so far as depended on the gods and their gifts and help and inspirations, nothing hindered me from forthwith living according to nature, though I still fall short of it through my own fault and through not observing the admonitions of the gods, and I may almost say their direct instructions, that my body is held out so long in such a kind of life, that I never touched either Benedicta or Theodotus, and that after having fallen into amatory passions, I was cured. And though I was often out of humor with Rusticus, I never did anything of which I had occasion to repent. We fought all the time, but I was never wrong. All right, so the guy's not perfect. That though it was my mother's fate to die young, she spent the last years of her life with me, that whenever I wished to help any man in his need or on any other occasion, I was never told that I had not the means of doing it, and that to myself the same necessity never happened to receive anything from another. That I have such a wife, so obedient and so affectionate and so simple, that I had abundance of good masters for my children, and that remedies have been shown to me by dreams, both against other things and against blood spitting and giddiness, and that when I had an inclination to philosophy, I did not fall into the hands of any sophist, and that I did not waste my time on writers of histories or in the resolution of syllogisms, or occupy myself about the investigation of appearances in the heavens, for all these things require the help of the gods and fortune. Among the quadi of the Granua. Oh, he's saying that's where he is. He's north of the border. All right. Well, I think we've got to stop now, but I just want to eat this book. We are on book 2. Should I read the first? See, I'm already reading it. No, stop. That was super fun. I'm looking forward to recapping the Saucers of the Illuminati with Graham. It was very, very nice of him to say yes, especially since we definitely have different opinions that we express. I myself with passion and him with good grace on the Union of the Unwanted. So I'm super excited that he decided to join us for that. But we'll still be back every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on YouTube and every Saturday morning on your favorite podcasting platform with our book discussion. And we are on Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This is Monica Perez. Catch me on Substack, by the way. Monica Perez Show. Thanks, guys.